The intriguing lore of Elden Ring's demigods.
The
Let's go.
demigods are each and all the direct offspring of Queen Marika. There was Godwyn, Morgoth, Mohg, Radahn,
The best boss in the game, by the way.
Rykard, Ranni, Mickler, and Malenia, Blade of Mickler. Malenia, Blade
This
of Mickler.
one move.
Malenia.
This weapon art, even when players use it, I just get confused, man. I hate PvP in this game.
Blade of
It's
Mickler
disgusting.
and Malenia. Not again. All of these
The
demigods
perfect cut stream, by the way.
had fallen from grace by the time the shattering occurred. But in this video, I
Yep.
want to mostly talk about the origins of these characters, who these demigods were before the fall. And some of these demigods fell a long way indeed. Before he became this unsightly mess, Godwyn the Golden was quite the heroic figure. He was born of the promising union between Lord Godfrey and Queen Marika, and he achieved great renown for his bravery in one of their wars at least, the War of the Ancient Dragons.
Like, this is every Souls game. The war against the ancient dragons. After a long time, it somewhat gets repetitive a bit, but yeah. Let's go with it.
This war began when Grandsax, a great ancient dragon, rained calamity down upon Leyndell, marking the only time in historical record that Leyndell's walls had fallen. It's not clear why Grandsax first attacked, but fortifying themselves against lightning, the Knights of the Erd Tree weathered his assault and Grandsax was defeated. However, this was only the beginning, and a bitter war against the ancient dragons was to follow. During this war, the Erd Tree Sentinels had an epiphany that the only way to truly protect the Erd Tree was to become dragons themselves. And so, despoiling the corpses of their foes, the grotesque Sentinels served the Erd Tree, but fought with the claws of the enemy instead. In the end, the ancient dragons were routed once again. In a graveyard of swords by the Stormcaller Church, the end of the war is commemorated. Here, we learn that during battle, Godwyn the Golden defeated Fortisax, called the mightiest dragon of them all. However, he did not kill Fortisax. Instead, he befriended him. And it was in this act that the powers of the ancient dragons truly became a part of Leyndell. After all, only those loved by dragons can survive the ordeal of cladding their bodies in lightning. So, from an unlikely friendship, an ancient dragon cult was born in the capital city, and the Knights of Leyndell learned to worship the dragons and wield their lightning. Lanciax, sister of Fortisax, even took human form to better commune with the Knights. It was officially decided that the worship of the ancient dragons did not conflict with belief in the Erd Tree, and it was all thanks to Godwyn,
Like a religion which could correlate, man.
commander of the dragons,
Could coexist, I mean.
golden lightning, and a true child of the golden lineage. But now, let's talk about Morgoth and Mohg, the Omen twins, who were also born of Godfrey and Marika's golden lineage. First, what is an omen? Well, to put it simply, an omen is an accursed child, seen as impure, as they are born with horns on the body and face.
Yeah, normally they would shunt these children, like they would put those people like in the sewers, for example. But Morg, they were like exceptions, I guess.
Happens, the correct thing to do, culturally at least, is to cut off the horns of the omen, an act which usually causes them to perish. It's pretty messed up, but some omen do survive this process, and some omen are even given a cleaver, crafted specifically for them and awarded as a tool of war, although these weapons are bestowed with a readiness to take them away. We find one such omen in an Erd Tree camp upon the Altus Plateau. Before you fight it, you might have noticed another omen nearby, writhing in its sleep. It's said that omens see evil spirits in their nightmares, and I think this omen
Bro, this is inspired by Berserk, I think.
is dreaming, haunted by the vengeful spirits of its accursed kin. This brings us to the Omen Killers, who are horrifying butchers of twisted conscience. They wear these horned masks that make a mockery of the Omen's nightmares, and these butchers hunt the Omen and amputate their horns.
Damn,
The first
that's
Omen
messed
killer
up.
was named Rollo, a famous perfumer who had to imbibe a physic to rid himself of emotion so that he could better perform his tasks.
I wish someday in the future he's gonna make something about the perfumers. Like, I don't know anything about those perfumers, the lore about them.
Remember, it seems many Omen have their horns excised when they're very young. That's definitely disturbing enough to warrant an emotion-killing physic in my book. However, if the Omen is born of royalty, then their horns are not cut off, but the Omen is kept underground, unbeknownst to anyone, and imprisoned for eternity.
Yeah, this is what I meant before.
By way of example, you would have seen all kinds of Omen confined to the sewers beneath Leyndell. But why are Omen considered to be accursed in the first place? Some of them are clearly intelligent, so what's inherently wrong with being born with horns and great strength? Well, it's important to remember, I think, that this curse might only really exist in the context of the Golden Order. After all, those afflicted with Omen horns are not able to return to the Erd Tree for rebirth, and are said to be born outside of its grace. But why does the Golden Order disavow the Omen, then? Well, it's hard to say for sure, but my working theory is that it's to do with the Crucible. According to this ancient incantation, horns were once an aspect of the Erd Tree's primordial crucible, where all life was once blended together. And with the exception of a couple of Crucible nights in and around Leyndell, we know that the Golden Order has started to distance itself from most things that touch upon the Crucible. While things like horns, knots, feathers, and scales once grew on the human body and were considered signifiers of the divine, now they are disdained as impurities as civilization has advanced. We learn this from the knot, scale,
basic discrimination.
and feather talismans, all of which are guarded by Omen, or dropped by Omen killers, no less. Unfortunately for the Order of the Erd Tree, these once divine impurities seem to crop up in some births, whether they like it or not. Almost like it's a genetic trait, as if it touches upon the Crucible at the root.
This boss fight, I just hate this shield dude. But this one, I can deal with him much easier than this one. Like a fucking shield bash every single time. I can't touch that shit.
Of the Erd Tree. And so you have to ask, is it really a curse to be born as a graceless Omen? Well, as with most curses in these games, I think that depends on your perspective. In any case, Mohg and Morgoth were Omen royalty, and thus they were born into a wretched mire far below the earth, horns and all. Here, they were kept under the strictest confinement. Each of them were bound with charmed shackles that were covered in roots or thorns, and bathed...
Wait, what? I think these were the items you could use to debuff a boss. For a second, yeah.
Magic. It seems
was it that?
Very few people were supposed to know that they even existed.
Yep, exactly. In this boss fight, you could use that to a golden ring would appear around this dude, and you could damage him.
Morgoth, for his part, renounced and despised his accursed Omen blood.
Bro, this blade.
Mohg embraced it. Deep underground, Mohg stood before an outer god, a being called the Formless Mother, who craves wounds. A being capable of bestowing power upon accursed blood. In this moment, Mohg's accursed blood erupted with fire, and he became besotted with the defilement that he was born into. Here, deep below the earth, he would go on to build a dynasty of blood in reverence of a mother. Something it seems he never truly had. As for Morgoth, he was born into the same accursed fate as his twin brother, but despite not being blessed with grace, he loved the Erd Tree all the same, and even took it upon himself to crawl out of the sewers and become the Erd Tree's protector when the Erd Tree needed him most. In the end, he rightfully became the Omen King and Lord of Leyndell. Omen or not, he was, after all, born of Godfrey and Marika's golden lineage. Of course, the marriage between Godfrey and Marika would be ended, and before long, Marika remarried with another man, a champion named Radagon, who Marika calls her other half.
I don't like Radagon. Like, in the lore, he does so many messed up things.
He became second Elden Lord.
Like the thing we're furious about, like, this dude is not right.
And the king consort, but he also brought with him 3 children from a previous marriage that he had had with a Carian queen named Renala.
Like, press F to Renala, like, she was hurt a bit, man.
These children
Fuck
were
Radagon.
Rani, Rykard, and Radahn. and they all became demigod stepchildren after Radagon's reunion with Queen
Yep, when you use that emote before the statue would change.
Marika. Possessed of his father's flaming red hair, Radahn was fond of its heroic implications and considered himself to be born of a great champion. Yet he also looked up to another man, Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, Queen Marika's first husband and the Lord of the Battlefield. But Radahn wasn't just the son of Radagon and an aspiring Lord of the Battlefield, he was also the son of Rennala, who was head of the Academy of Raya Lucaria and Queen of Caria. So as a Carian royal, inclined towards sorcery, Radahn bent his will towards mastering gravitational magics.
Yep. He also used it so he could still ride his horse to so the horse could still he could still ride it, yeah.
Gravity well.
From sentences, I don't know why. What the
stars. These techniques were taught to him in Celia, the town of sorcery, all so he would never have to abandon his beloved but scrawny steed.
Exactly.
That said, before long, his powers would be put towards a more cosmic purpose than...
Again, I didn't even notice that his fucking feet were gone.
Simply allowing him to ride his own horse. Radahn was taught gravitational magic by an Alabaster Lord, a member of a race of ancients with skin of stone who was said to have risen to life when a meteor struck long ago. And when his lessons were complete, Radahn uttered these chilling words.
Thank you for your tutelage. For now, I can challenge the stars.
And, of course, he did conquer the stars, and the very constellations...
He stopped them right in their tracks, like they couldn't move, they were gone.
...would be halted by his strength.
It's
but of
insane.
course, you kind of have to ask, why? Why was it necessary to conquer the stars in the first place? Well, I have a couple of theories. Theory one is that it was done in self-defense. After all, according to the Sword Gravestone, Radahn was protecting Celia. What's more, gravitational magic has...
Those fucking bosses, especially at the top of the mountain hill, I just went up with my horse, I instantly got knocked down and died. Like,
power, and
why?
Many gravitational beasts are proof of that destructive power. A being named Astel had even come down to the lands between in the past and destroyed a place called the Eternal City. What's more, Celians are descendants of the Eternal, positioned right above the Eternal City underground, so there is an argument to be made for Radahn purely defending Celia for some reason here. But it's possible for Radahn to have fought in this conflict and to have made the first move as well, so this is theory 2, that Radahn conquered the stars as a preventative measure in service to the greater will.
He wasn't definitely not egotistical or something like that. He was pretty generous, I think.
According to a set of astrologer items, the night sky...
Like the people love Radahn. And they just wanted to put him out of his misery, especially with like the Radahn festival.
Fate. There's even a banished sect of people called the Nox, who live deep below the earth in eternal anticipation of the coming age of stars and their Lord of Night. Long ago, these people invoked the ire of the Greater Will, so it would make sense that those in service to the Greater Will might have sought to arrest the stars and put an end to this fate. What's more, Radahn was just a huge fanboy of Godfrey, and he seems to have more loyalty to the Erd Tree than to the moon. Finally, the telescope description says that the fate once writ in the night skies.
This is important. Always read the item descriptions of every single item you find, especially boss weapons, to learn more about the game. This is like practically the only way, and yeah, lead all those swords which have some things written on them. You see them, you know them, but I never read the one for the fucking telescope. Like, why would you?
Had been fettered by the Golden Order, so surely this is referencing Radahn's actions, and it levels the blame at the Golden Order. But putting Radahn's motivations aside, it's a fact that the stars were held back, and that this had great consequences for many, especially for the rest of his Carian royal family.
Let me explain. The fate of the Carian royal family is guided by the stars, as is the fate of Lady Rani, first heir in the Carian royal line. But General Radahn is the conqueror of the stars, who stood up to the swirling constellations halting their movement in a smashing victory. And so, if General Radahn were defeated, the stars would once again resume their movement, as would Lady Rani's destiny.
Lunar Princess Rani was the daughter of Radagon and Renala, and sister to Radahn. Interestingly, if you look at her true body atop the Divine Tower, it looks like she might have also inherited the red hair of Radagon. Cool detail.
But could be, maybe. Yeah.
Unlike her brother, Radahn, she quite clearly took after her mother more, who was Renala, head of the Carian royal family. The House of Caria has this storied history, one that seems to go way back to the astrologers. In the Carian Manor, we find one of their treasures, the Sword of Night and Flame. It reads, "Astrologers who preceded the sorcerers established themselves in mountaintops that nearly touched the sky and considered the fire giants their neighbors. Renala herself was an astrologer, always chasing the stars in her youth. Then she met the full moon, and in time, the astrologer became a queen, establishing the House of Caria as royalty." Caria appears to have a matriarchal hierarchy, with multiple princesses and Carian knights that serve as their retainers. Now, however, there is only one princess, Rani, daughter of Renala. And at the time of her birth, she would have been set to inherit quite a lot of power indeed, for the Carian royal family was at its height, and her mother was not only queen, she was also head of the Academy of Raya Lucaria, having bewitched them with the enchanting power of the full moon. Leading the young Rani by the hand, Renala guided her daughter to a meeting with a
Okay, this is the basic lore we already know. Like, I think most of the Lunar Princess Rani stuff is things we already know, because so many people are interested in that.
Of her own. What Rani beheld was cold, dark, and veiled in occult mystery. A dark moon, a sort of twin to Renala's own full moon. You can even see both of these hanging in the sky if you start.
Yeah, you need to look closely. Like, when you were on top of this area, like when you got there after defeating that weird alien boss, when you used the ring to get up here, you could see both of these things. Like, this was a nice view, man. I thought the tree would burn down because it kind of looked like it, but that was not it. That wasn't the time for it, I guess.
From the heights of the Moonlight Plateau. Another who guided Rani was a character called the Snowy Crone, who the young Rani encountered deep in the woods. When you look at Rani, it's actually the likeness of this snow witch that you're seeing, as the doll that now houses Rani's soul was modeled after her.
Bro, I thought this was just the doll and the soul was Rani herself. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know that these were like two personalities, maybe?
Probably as a sign of respect. Clearly, Rani looked up to this mysterious woman. She became Rani's secret mentor, and she even knew about the dark moon,
Maybe.
teaching the young Rani to fear it as she imparted her cold sorceries. So, what do these moons represent? That's just a theory, but I think the moons kind of act as guides. The lost black moon of Noxtella, for example, was the guide of countless stars. What's more,
Yeah, he
Rani
already said they looked at the stars to know what their fate is and shit like
and
that.
Renala were heavily influenced by their moons. Renala's moon bewitched the academy that she became the head of, and Rani's dark moon, for its part, also imparts wisdom and leads a voyage in the Age of Stars ending. They could even be outer gods. And yet, for all of this guidance, Caria and Leonia as a whole have experienced steep decline. Radagon betrayed the House of the Moon. Radahn locked the stars out of motion. The Academy town is flooded to the north. Caria has been ruined
I don't know, why was it flooded? That's the thing I don't know. Why?
west, and the stars and moon have gone their separate ways. Nevertheless, Rani, last princess of Caria, remains, carefully setting new plans into motion. Sibling to Rani and Radahn was a man named Rykard, who was Lord of the Vault.
This is pretty interesting. I also don't know much about him, but he said that together we devour the gods, and he was like against all this shit, all this ordeal. You know?
Manor. There is evidence that Rykard was friendly with his siblings. he conspired with his sister Rani later on, and
And what's the stuff about the serpents in this game? Like, I think they have a different role, not like in Dark Souls.
there's even a portrait of Radahn hung in the Volcano Manor, as well as a portrait of Rykard himself before the fall. Item descriptions mark Rykard as stern, ambitious, heroic, and blasphemous. A part of this blasphemy
Blasphemous.
was opposing the Erd Tree, which actually drew many knights to his banner, for Rykard believed in taking by force, just as the gods did, and clearly many believed that he would usher in a new age. The armor set of the Gelmir Knights reveals to us what were once very loyal soldiers. The crest of red feathers are there to symbolize Rykard's pedigree as Lord Radagon's son, and the emblem upon their chest piece represents a lord who had lofty ambitions. However, as Rykard delved into the ancient secrets of Mount Gelmir, he came across the immortal Great Serpent, an
Yep.
ancient
What is this deal about?
deity that aligned with Rykard's ambitions. And so, Rykard fed himself to the Great Serpent so that he might devour, grow, and live eternally. Alas, this was too much for his knights, and they believed that their master's heroic ambitions had degenerated into mere
Yep.
greed. So they searched desperately for a weapon with which they might halt their lord, and they found it too.
Such a sad stories, like those knights, they were so loyal, but at the end, man.
The immortal
All went
serpent
down.
had lived for a long time, and so there was also a weapon to kill it that had been designed long ago as well.
But this was a better fight, better gimmick fight than fighting Yom. You need to be honest, man.
A serpent
A bit
hunter,
harder.
but it was too late. As the lord lost his dignity, so too did the knights lose their master. Not that it bothered Rykard.
Now we can devour God together.
Together.
Next, we need to discuss Millennia and Mickler. These two were twins as they were born. No, Rykard, please. Anyway, as you know, Radagon's marriage with Rhaenyra did not last. Afterwards, he returned to the Golden Order and became Queen Marika's consort. But what I haven't yet mentioned is that together they were blessed with two
Bro.
demigod children, the so-called twin prodigies. Now, in the last lore video, I briefly proposed that these two twins were born after the Shattering, after Radagon and Marika had merged together to become a single god.
Yes,
However,
exactly. This emote. Oh, not emote. It's a spell. Sorry.
I've since changed my mind. I think Millennia and Mickler were clearly born before the Shattering. There's just so much proof that
Incantation.
these two twins were a force that were influencing the world long before the Shattering took place. Anyway, both of these twins were born afflicted. Specifically in the Japanese text,
This
it's
looks so graceful, man. I love
said
it.
that their births were vulnerable. Mickler was born afflicted with eternal youth, and Millennia, for her
She had the other one had the rot. The one youth and rot. Was it like that?
part,
Please?
was vulnerable to rot.
Yes,
Interestingly,
exactly.
Millennia's Scarlet Rot is actually an outer god. This outer god, like many others in the game, seems to have an order that is able to be imposed upon the world via an Empyrean vessel, and Millennia was that vessel. And while the Scarlet Rot is pretty terrible, you can sort of argue that it's got a beauty to it. According to Gowry,
It's more grotesque in my opinion.
Order of Rot is resplendent. It's a cycle of death and rebirth, kind of like the lotus flower, which is a flower that blooms anew, beautiful and fresh from mud. I actually have art of this flower hanging in my home. I always love the symbol of it. I actually have lots of art hanging now. and I'm
Bro,
going to-
most display arts. Go buy it from VaatiVidya. He deserves his money, or the artist he works with.
to talk about all of this artwork that you can buy at the end of the video. Anyway, so Millennia, the
I'm definitely gonna buy one in the future.
Empyrean, was vulnerable
something
to
back here, man.
and afflicted
Nothing.
by the Scarlet Rot. There was said to be no cure to this, and while fire and consecration seemed to be somewhat effective at warding it off, Millennia would slowly lose her physical self to the rot. Interestingly, old legends of the Scarlet Rot have persisted in the world for generations, and we learn more about the Rot God from the Blue Dancer charm. The dancer in blue represents a fairy who, in legend, bestowed a flowing sword upon a blind swordsman. blade in hand, the swordsman sealed away an ancient god, a god that was rot itself. Specifically, this god was long ago sealed away in the stagnant water that is downstream of the Ainsel River underground. And wherever rot appears, the kindred of rot appear as well.
Fuck those guys. Like, if you get no, if you just go to the area, I wouldn't go past them. That's a bad idea because they all shoot at you at the same time, and you can't really dodge that shit.
These are pests and servants.
Disgusting.
Of the rot. And now, in the current age, these are servants that have been forsaken by Millennia, who is their new goddess. So, this blind swordsman with the flowing curved sword actually went on to become Millennia's mentor. So technically it's him that we have to blame for this goddamn attack. The prosthesis wearer heirloom tells us more. A talisman engraved with a scene from a heroic tale. Though born into the accursed rot, when the young girl encountered her mentor and his flowing blade, she gained wings of unparalleled strength. Millennia's ridiculous attack is called the Waterfowl Dance, and aesthetically it makes sense that, flowing water would counter the effects of rot.
I always called it like the water flow dance and then the water pole dance. Like, never knew that.
For just as still waters turn foul, stagnation turns to decay. Thus, warriors must remain ever drifting. And indeed, Millennia does resist the call of the rot. There's a lot of evidence that she's not really a willing vessel, but through sheer will and sense of self, she resists the rot, and only when she is truly pressed in battle will she abandon this will and bloom into the goddess within. Millennia's first bloom was during her fight against Radahn, and releasing her scarlet rot was a last-ditch effort that would forever taint the land of Caelid and cripple Radahn. So whatever
this trailer was incredible, man. This shit
was fighting for in this fight against Radahn,
Look
somehow
at this.
it was worth this terrible act. In general terms, at least, it's clear that Millennia was fighting for her brother. Apart from the times where she relapses into being the goddess of rot, she is known as the Blade of Mickler. She actually goes to great lengths to tell you this. I don't know if you heard. Despite being the toughest
every single time this line
boss in From Software history, she's actually fighting for his right to godhood, not her own. In Millennia's own words, her brother Mickler possesses the wisdom, the allure of a god. He is the most fearsome Empyrean of all. For his part, Mickler did a lot to earn his sister's dedication, not the least of which was inspiring her armor and a prosthetic of unalloyed gold. And it's not just his sister that loved Mickler, many people did. The Bewitching Branch is an item that you can use to turn enemies into temporary allies, and it reads, "Indeed, he has learned very well how to compel such affection." For his father Radagon, Mickler fashioned and gifted to him a fundamentalist incantation called Triple Rings of Light. Radagon then returns the favor, gifting back an incantation called Radagon's Rings of Light.
What I hate about those incantations, like they need intelligence and not faith. Where's the sense in that? Like, why From Software, sorry. Why did you do it like that? Like, I was pretty disappointed about these changes, and what I also don't like is that there's no true pyromancy in this game. Where is my fucking fire vortex from Dark Souls 3? I hope it will be in an upcoming DLC. I hope I will get my true fire flame in my fucking hands. I don't want to dragon incantations. I want to have true pyromancy in this game. Because that's just my favorite playstyle, and I don't know why From Software still hasn't implemented it in. Why didn't they do that? Like, this was the playstyle I seek the most, like I love the most, and it's just not there in the game, and this why, yeah. Just bad for me, but for you, everyone else, I think you had a lot of fun.
These interactions show some of Mickler's
At the end, I just did a normal incantation build, yeah.
Positive connections with his father, and also Golden Order fundamentalism. And yet, the young Mickler abandoned fundamentalism, for it could do nothing to treat Millennia's accursed rot. This was the beginning of unalloyed gold. So, what is unalloyed gold? Well, an alloy is a composition of metals, so Unalloyed gold is pure gold, essentially, with no external mixtures. This gold apparently can ward away the meddling of outer gods, and so Mickler bent a lot of his efforts towards creating an unalloyed gold needle. Specifically, this needle was crafted for his sister, to ward off the rot god and forestall the effects of the incurable rotting sickness. We see the bond between the siblings as well when we visit Mickler's Halig tree. We see a statue of a one-armed woman embracing a child, Mickler. In this place, we see the biggest example of Mickler's benevolence, the Halig tree, and the society that was built into the brace that supports it. This was a promised land, seen as a salvation to many who were shunned or persecuted, provided that they can actually find the path here, of course. And like many other Empyreans,
I love these elevators in the game, like, they were great.
Seems to have had the will within them to create a new order, and his is an order that's somewhat modeled on the ones that came before it. The biggest thing is that the Halig tree is clearly inspired by the Erd tree, but the difference...
But I think it looks much more unique.
Is that Mickler's Halig...
Like the Erd tree is like this straight big thing, but the Halig tree is more like a bit slivery. Looks more like a normal tree.
The tree is said to be accepting of all, even those the Erd tree shuns. Mickler himself was once embedded inside of the Halig tree, and he watered it with his very own blood, since it was a mere sapling. Tragically, however, he was ripped out of this womb during the shattering, and his Halig tree ultimately failed to grow into an Erd tree, becoming a misshapen husk instead. But that's the story for another day. There's also a ton of cut content to do with Mickler, and he's one of the most mysterious demigods, who I'm sure we'll learn about more later. But there is
Could be in a DLC.
one more thing that I want to mention before I go. It's kind of one theory I had during the making of this video. So Mickler and Millennia each have their own butterflies. Millennia's is the Aeonian Butterfly, which inhabit the swamp of Aeonia and are rumored to come from the wings of the rot goddess herself. And I think it's fair to say that Mickler's butterfly is the nascent butterfly, which appears as if it's just emerged from its cocoon for its entire life. This is a reference to Mickler's eternal youth and his cocoon in the Halig tree. But there is, of course, a third butterfly, right? There's the smoldering butterfly. It's said to be an eternally burning butterfly that serves as kindling. Now bear with me, but it's my theory that this butterfly is a reference to Melina, who the Blade of Calling calls the Kindling Maiden, and the one who walks alongside
The Kindling Maiden. I get some Dark Souls references.
This might suggest that Melina is a sibling to Millennia.
But it doesn't mean if something is burning it, it doesn't mean that it is inspired from Dark Souls 3. That's not what I meant. It could be one.
And Mickler. Again, that's just a theory, but what I really want to talk about here is that, at the very least, Melina is almost certainly the daughter of Marika. We learned this a long time ago from looking at her name in the game's files, and we can further infer it from her dialogue, as she has a few lines that refer to mothers and one that says that she was born inside the Erd tree. So her being the daughter of Marika is also just a theory, but this one is much more concrete than the butterfly one. Although the reason I like the butterfly theory is that it gives us a hint as to who Melina's parents might have been. Her parents would have been Radagon and Marika, which is to say Marika herself alone, I guess, because Radagon is Marika. Honestly, Melina as a character has only become more mysterious since the game was released, and I'm really only scratching the surface.
You only get more questions. It's like with every Souls game.
This theory. But speaking of times before Elden Ring was released, back then, a long time ago, I commissioned this piece from a renowned artist named Marco, and now I'm so excited to reveal it for the first time. This storybook scene is heavily inspired by the early looks we had at Elden Ring, with a red-haired protagonist, spirit companions, a mount that looks like Yakul and a bit like Torrent, and a few other hidden details in the piece. This piece and all of my other prints are now available over at Spring, where you can actually buy them fully
This one,
framed.
I think I'm gonna get this one, or something like that. I love this one the most. Holy shit. This is something you should spend your money for.
And ready to hang. They actually ship with a beautiful frame. The frame itself is a nice black satin finish, and you can even opt for a white border around the print, which I think looks really classy in certain cases. I think these posters are a cool way to support the channel and artists, and for you to actually get something in return that will make your room look better. So check out my prints if you're interested, but this is the end, and thank you for watching.
And this one too. It's more on the techie side, but yeah, still love the Dark Souls references, and in general, this is like my second favorite, I think.
I'll see you next time.
Remake Demonics, okay. Wow. Nice. So go subscribe to VaatiVidya. It is of utmost importance that you do that immediately. And yeah, buy his stuff. Like this dude. Without him, I wouldn't know shit about Souls. Like this the only lore source, and some other ones I consume, I guess. Like since the Dark Souls 2 days, I watch all his shit. I love the Dark Souls 2 lore. I even like that a bit more than the Dark Souls 1 lore. But Dark Souls 3 lore was the best of them. And now we're gonna see how deep the Elden Ring lore gets. But yeah, I'm quite impressed by the Elden Ring lore. The thing is, it's much more friendly to new people for the series. Like back in the day, you didn't really knew what was going on. You only knew shit if you were like reading the item descriptions, watching these YouTubers. But in Elden Ring, you could truly grasp something. You could really, what should I say? You could truly grasp the story. You know somewhat what is going on, but you still need to learn more about it. And that's what that is what I want to say. Yeah. Damn. Butterfly theory is really interesting. Like this always, most of the stuff is theorizing, but it could be like that. It could be like that or like that. And this is what Miyazaki truly intended. He wanted us to theorize about most of these things, but some of it could be also wrong. So if I said something wrong, or if VaatiVidya said something wrong, just go in the comments and write that shit down. Like it's important that we correct ourselves, each other. And yeah, thank you for watching. If you want to see more content like this, if you want to see more reactions on games in general, like I mostly do reactions, sometimes do tutorials on some things, but yeah, mostly reactions right now because they're going good, and that's actually it. Leave a like and sub, and I see you next time. Wafer out.